Hi, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yourself?
Good. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. Fellow Spoonie down under, you're in Melbourne, I'm in Sydney. Always love meeting people Spoonies that live in Australia.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
Yeah, so you and I connected over Instagram because you kind of reached out to me. You have had CFS for a number of years, and we got in a conversation about recovery. Sounds like you've recovered in your journey for the most part, and I've recovered in my journey from CFS. I've had a lot of people asking questions about CFS recovery, what my journey looked like, tips and everything. And I thought I'd bring you on to talk about your journey with CFS recovery.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Like I mentioned before, I'm all up for helping people, and
Yeah.
I'm passionate about recovery and just trying to get people to have their best life possible. And I understand what they're going through and how hard it is, because previously, before, I was a marathon runner before chronic fatigue, and compared to going a marathon is like walking in the park compared to
Oh,
overcoming
yeah.
chronic fatigue syndrome.
Totally.
So that's just explaining
Yeah.
how hard it is, and I understand and I get everything. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And just for our listeners, I want to put in a little bit of a disclaimer that I and both Chris and I are aware that CFS recovery is a long journey. It might not happen for everyone. And so this podcast is very much as a heart. Like we've had so many people reach out asking what our journeys look like. So we're going to share how we recovered and what that looked like for us. But please don't feel like we're forcing anything on you guys. And honestly, everyone is in their own space in their journey. Yeah, so
yeah,
Chris,
sure.
let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's just start right off the bat. What's your pet peeve? We gotta hear it right in the beginning of the podcast.
I don't have too many pet peeves, but definitely is people when they're slurping on their noodles or on their soup. So I just
Really?
hate the sound. Yeah, that's yeah.
That's
So
so funny. What about their
I
coffee?
just
Like
no,
the
coffee's
little sip,
okay.
the
Yeah,
can
that
you
it's
handle that?
more like that. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
you
no,
can't
the
handle that.
coffee sips aren't. No, coffee sips are okay. It's more like
Okay.
the noodle. Yeah, so
That's
and it's a
so
bit more
funny.
loud. I mean, I feel like I got to cringe my ears.
That's so funny. I love the randomest pet
Yeah,
peeves. My uncle had that issue as well, and also chewing too loud,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
not like a great pet peeve to have because lots of people chew loud. So but I'd love to first get straight into like top three tips for CFS recovery. Let's just get straight into it. I want to hear the top three things that helped you.
Yeah, well, like I've mentioned to you before, I did the Toby Morrison CFS program, and from that, the top four principles in recovery were mindset, nutrition, sleep, quality sleep, and restorative movement,
Yeah. Yep. I
which
love that.
we can all go into a little bit of greater detail over the podcast.
So like those are you would say top four.
They were the top four, so instead of three, we'll make it four.
That's okay. I love what you're saying in that because I've actually recently I'm going on my own sort of health journey. I'm recovering from CFS, but I still have chronic pain. And I didn't put the sleep component in my recovery or in my sort of framework for how will get better. But that's such a good point. I would put mindset, something like physical as an exercise, physical
Yeah,
internally, which is nutrition, and then that's the three ones plus sleep, obviously. So I'm pretty much in
yeah,
agreement with Toby Morrison. That's how I have
yeah.
as well kind of structured my recovery.
Yeah, well, just onto that. Like, I suppose everyone's symptoms are so different, and some people wiped out sleeping 12, 13 hours a day, whereas I had insomnia for a little bit. So I had to get into a sleep routine to improve it. And I learned about
What did that look for like for you?
well, basically just winding myself down, like lots of like meditation and deep breathing and all like that, and just trying to get to bed at 10 o'clock. Um, Earplugs sleeping masks, white noise machines, the whole lot, anything just to help me, and just try not to sleep in the afternoon at all, and just trying to make it a routine and just a structure of each day, of and just not trying to, even like if it was on the weekend, make sure I was in bed by 10. And yeah, at the start, I suppose it might be a little bit controversial, but I did have to use sleeping pills because it was a bit of an issue. But eventually, I was able to wind myself off them and sleep naturally, and then use supplements
Wow,
such
that's
as
amazing.
like valerian forte or magnesium, which are great for sleep. But yeah, sleep was definitely an issue. I can remember at one stage I didn't sleep for 3 nights, and
Wow.
that was pretty scary. Yeah,
And
I just couldn't
before
sleep.
CFS, did you
I
kind
had
of have a history of having issues with sleeping?
no, I was a great sleeper. It was just because I had a million things running through my mind at the time, and I just couldn't fall asleep.
So did the meditation help you with that aspect? The kind of
Yeah,
removing the
just
noise from your
winding
mind?
myself. And just deep breathing, and just concentrating, like block with the getting quality earplugs. Just that was blocking out all the noise in the background in the house, and just having a white noise machine just soothing all the air in the background as well. So then I just concentrated on that and just didn't try and concentrate on any of my thoughts or anything like that. Just eventually, after repetition, as you probably realize with a lot of things within recovery, I was able to get into a good quality sleeping routine.
And that's interesting that what you say, just going back to what you're saying about not sleeping in the afternoon. And I think it's also a testament to how different each of us are because I remember I've always slept well, even when I had CFS. I would sleep between like 8 and 10 hours a night, but I'd still be tired, obviously, because you have CFS. And I remember there came a moment where I was so tired and I kept thinking I needed to fight through it. But then I just started taking afternoon naps. And then I slept like 1 to 3 hours in the afternoon. And then I slept a full night. And I did that
Yeah,
frequently. And that actually helped me, which was interesting. But
yeah,
maybe that's also because I didn't struggle sleeping at night. So it was like
sleep.
that
Yeah,
extra added rest really helped my body kind of come out of that cycle, if that makes sense.
yeah, for sure. Well, as I've learned from the sleep is probably like the number one, like it's like the number one healer, which we don't really know so much. It goes unnoticed, and it's just recharges and recharges the batteries basically, and it's where we rest, digest, and recharge ourselves. And without sleep, without generally quality sleep, we're probably not going to improve our overall health. And once I was able to get into a better sleeping pattern, I did find my symptoms getting a lot better as well.
That's so good. And in order to get better sleep, can you list off again the things that you used?
Okay, so I got quality earplugs. I went through a few at the chemist and they were hurting my ears, and I can't remember the name of the top. I think they're called Alpine something, but they were very good and they blocked out everything. I had a good sleeping mask to block out all the light. I had a white noise machine. I don't use this anymore, but that was in the background in the room, which just like basically like you're the fans going or you're on an aeroplane. And those supplements, which I mentioned as well. And as well, the deep breathing and the meditation before bed, and journaling as well. If I had any thoughts at the top of my head, I'd write them down before bed, and then try not to be distracted by any of it before bed. So
That's really good. That's really helpful for anyone listening. Like, if you're having it's really helpful for anyone listening if you're struggling sleeping, and you can kind of follow these, reach out to Chris on Instagram and get some more details around the supplements. If you are going to take supplements for sleep, make sure you consult with a doctor, naturopath, GP, etc., about kind of that sort of thing. Okay, so that's one component, sleep. Let's talk
yeah.
about nutrition. Did you have to change
Okay.
your
So
diet?
generally I had an okay diet before because I was sport before I got sick, but I was also doing a lot of bad stuff as well, like lots of alcohol. So I cut that from the moment I got sick. When I came down with the virus, I drank pretty heavily for about 20 years. I was part of, I don't know if you realise that Aussie culture of playing football and cricket on the weekend and then partying hard, or after the game. I was stuck in that culture. And so basically from the day that I got sick, I stopped drinking. I just went cold turkey. So, yeah, I have been asked, was that the hardest thing about chronic fatigue, stopping drinking? And that was by far the easiest. So
Really?
that's just goes to show how, like I mentioned before, the battle of how hard the chronic fatigue overcoming it was. And my biggest issue with I had chronic pancreatitis as well.
Wow.
On top of my chronic, so after 2 years into my CFS journey, in 2019, I basically spent the whole year in and out of hospital. I had 10 operations on my pancreas.
Oh, wow.
They kept on lithotripsy blasts and scrapes. I had stones in my pancreas duct. My blood enzymes on my pancreas were like 10,000 when they should have been in range of like 550 to 100. So I was in a lot of pain.
Wow.
And eventually that I had to have like a major surgery.
Okay.
So, and that's helped. It wasn't like, well, you fix that up, you're better. Though it was 25% of recovery, fixing up the pancreas issue. I had to have full-on surgery where the doctor had to go in where the stones were forming. He had to cut part of the pancreas and then put bile over the top, over the cut. So yeah, that wiped me out then for a few weeks after. But 2019 was basically a write-off. Like I was just in and out. I was in and out of the emergency. I was having I was either going into emergency because I had pancreas attacks, inflammation, or I was having these surgeries. So it was a tiring year, but yeah.
Well, and then when you went into 2020 with a bang, unlike everyone else on the planet.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So but back to that, I had an Ayurvedic. That helped really good. And then once I was able to get pancreas issue sorted, the Ayurvedic diet was able to come into was able to work a lot better. It was just a basic diet of just cooked veg, some fruits, lentils, chickpeas, all that, or just easy foods on the gut to digest, because I had a lot of digestion problems. So, and now that I recovered, like for the first time in like maybe 4 or 5 years, like at Christmas this year, I was able to eat seafood and have a few and snacks and all like that, which I hadn't eaten for like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So that was, yeah.
That's interesting what you say about Ayurvedic food and all of that, because that was one of the things that helped me as well, is kind of moving more in the Ayurvedic direction. I don't really do that as much anymore, but I did do that for a season, and I found it to be somewhat helpful to kind of get me over the line, for sure.
Yeah, I think with digestion there's so much conflict with CFS ME. There's so much like conflict in terms of what diet to do, but I think just like Ayurvedic worked for me, but go with it whatever diet works the best for you, whatever is going to be best for your digestion.
And that might look like trying different diets as well, for sure.
Yeah, I went through it all as well, but eventually I got into Ayurveda and that worked best to me. So, and especially I drink warm water all day long. I'm not sure if you did that as part of your.
No, there's this Ayurvedic tea that's like fennel and coriander, I think. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. It was a tea that I drank every day, which was really nice, but it gave me acid reflux, so I had to stop drinking it. But yeah, there was the supplements, there was the tea, there was also I went to see an Ayurvedic doctor here in Sydney for a little while. And what was interesting about that is that seeing him actually led me to realize that the majority of my symptoms were related to my stress levels and my emotions, because I kept going in to see him because I would have flare-ups. And I don't know if any of you guys have done Ayurvedic or if you've actually been to an Ayurvedic doctor. They check like your tongue and they check like your energy and all of that. I don't know if you've had that.
Yeah.
So he checked everything and he was like, physically, you're fine. It's your issue's emotional. And I was like, that's literally, he told me, he was like, look, I can give you medicine, but your issue's emotional. And that's, I think, what really kicked me off on a whole journey of going to therapy, counseling, inner healing, inner child, et cetera, is I realized that for me, I can take all these supplements and yes, they'll help. I can get on all these diets and yes, it'll help. But at the end of the day, I'm experiencing repressed emotions or things that I haven't processed, or I'm sad about something or trauma from my childhood, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
just going back on that, like I remember when I first went to it, my tongue was coated full on white when I first had the chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
It was just white. So eventually now it's a little bit of white, but it's mainly pink in recovery. So
that's really
it just
good.
goes to show, like, yeah.
And that's another thing that indicates actually quite an unhealthy gut, is having a tongue that's coated in white. It indicates that there's some imbalance in your gut. So guys can go check your tongues in the mirror after this podcast.
And back on that, I found the Ayurvedic doctors as well, they generally prescribe good supplement. I found their supplements to be very handy. Again, in Melbourne, I can recommend the Ayurvedic doctor that I went to, but you can put in a link later at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, we can put it. We can put in the one that I saw in Sydney. We can put on the one you saw in Melbourne. And also, you guys can feel free to Google Ayurvedic doctor near you. Make sure you look at reviews. That's generally how I find doctors, is I either get a recommendation or I'll Google it and look at the reviews.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's nutrition.
Yeah.
What's the next one? Oh, movement.
So
okay, this is
yes.
I'm excited about talking about this because we were talking about this earlier before we turned on the mic about graded exercise therapy, which is now called something else. And I know that you've tried that, and I'm keen to talk about this because it recently kind of research came out that graded exercise therapy doesn't actually help people with chronic fatigue syndrome. So I'm really keen to hear your thoughts around that, if it's worked for you. Okay. And also a little disclaimer here. It's just a chat. We're not recommending this. We're just kind of talking about what it looked like for Chris.
Okay, so in my first year, I got graded exercise therapy recommended by my GP, and it sent me backwards. Like, wow. It put me to, like, I was recommended to go to work 3 days a week. I was as a school teacher, and I was in no state to be going to work at all. But he recommended that you need to go 3 days a week. And he said, I kept on relapsing every day when I got home from work. And he said, oh, well, don't worry. That's all part of, you're going to eventually get stronger and better. And like, I was just, like the first year of recovery was just, it was just, the first year was just such a confusion. And I put all my faith in this doctor, and it basically just hit me for six. And it meant, like, mentally and physically was just making me so, like, frustrated and all like that. Cause I was basically at this stage, resting up at home so I could make it into 3 days at work. And I was giving work probably 10, 15% of my job. I was lucky enough as a teacher. I had this assistant in the classroom, and she knew a little bit about chronic fatigue, and she just told me to to sit down and she'll teach the classroom. So
Wow.
I sort of got away with it a little bit, but in the end, I just had to say that was enough. And when I think I did it for about 3 terms, and then I basically collapsed again. And then I had to just say that I can't do this. And I had to take ownership. And then from there, it was basically, I sort of lost faith in Western medicine. And that's why I think graded exercise is such a bad name, because it's being prescribed by doctors such as the one and they don't really have a thorough understanding of the illness. I did the Toby Morrison course, CFS. Toby's experienced it. They had health coaches who have also gone through chronic fatigue. And I believe with people who have actually gone through chronic fatigue and experienced themselves, I think they have got a good understanding about graded exercise and all like that. But if someone is going to give it to you like a GP or maybe even a physio or or someone like that, and they don't have much understanding, because there's just so much complexities with the illness. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so I found I understood it a lot more this is from coming from someone who
do you think
got absolutely thrashed by doing graded exercise at the start, but with the doctor, and then by moving to a program which was able to help me, which was able to coach me through it one-to-one, that was able to help. And there was like a 8-step process as well. It was as opposed to just willy-nilly go out there and teach. Like, you've got to, I think with graded exercise, you've got to factor in the 4 principles of recovery. You've got to factor, if you've had a bad night's sleep, you can't go out and do whatever your baseline. You're going to have to have an easy day off. If you've eaten junk food, you can't go out either and do because your gut's probably not going to feel that well. If you're in a bad mindset as well, generally you're not going to be able to do. Like I found, anxiety can take up a lot of your energy as well. So there's just so many factors with graded exercise, and I think it can only work if it's prescribed by someone who I believe has experienced the illness and has got a 10-step program instead of just going out there and it's got to be really really carefully. It's got to be worked. Like, it's not just nothing willy-nilly or anything like that. It's got to be.
Once you get to that point of being prescribed, it's not graded exercise therapy anymore. It's really more personalized help, maybe from an EP or someone that has gone through it. It's not, I think when we talk about graded exercise therapy, it's essentially what you spoke about in the beginning, is GPs prescribing exercise as a way to combat this illness, when it actually often makes things worse, which is unhealthy because they don't have an understanding of the illness,
Yeah.
So I did want to bring this up because, again, to our listeners, we're not advocating for graded exercise therapy. It's obviously research has debunked that that's actually not a helpful thing for people with chronic fatigue. I will say that in my journey, the moments that I was able to incorporate movement up to my limit were, as when I did that, I experienced a better energy day than if I hadn't, if that makes sense. And I don't know if you've experienced similar, Chris.
Yeah, well, I remember in the first year, I was just in the push and crash cycle of feeling okay one day, then feeling bad for 5. And that's what you've got to avoid. So it's got to be carefully done. You've got to find your baseline, and you've got to go 70. So say your baseline's 20-minute walk. Well, then maybe you do a 10-minute walk, rest up for 3 hours, and then do another 10-minute walk later on in the day, instead of doing a 25-minute walk in one hit.
Yeah.
It's got to be carefully done because you've got to avoid that push and crash cycle as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's so
Because
important you bring
of
that up
course,
because so many people with chronic fatigue syndrome are like type A, hyper motivated, high achievers. So at least for me, like when I got chronic fatigue, I was like, wait, what? I have to stop doing as much? Like I have to cut down on activities. And even within the chronic fatigue in my recovery journey, it was like this need to achieve recovery. And like if someone told me, okay, you need to walk 20 minutes a day, I would have been like, okay, I need to do 20 minutes straight of walking. Whereas what you say is such a good idea is like changing that mindset of how can I get out of this mindset of I need to achieve this when really we actually just need to listen to our bodies, you know?
yeah, exactly. Well, that's half of it as well. You got to know your body as well. Like you got to become best mates basically with your body and know it inside out. Um, yeah,
Right, which I
if
think,
you're having if you're feeling absolutely wiped out or you've had a bad night's sleep, well then you don't do much exercise. But if everything seems to be going okay, then push yourself 75. Maybe have a percent of your baseline, have a rest, and then maybe you can do something again in the after, like an hour or so later. And eventually, with small increments on the way, safely doing it, you can increase your activity. But it's got to be carefully done. Nothing like willy nilly go out there, walk 20 minutes, and then with
yeah.
no structure or no sort of. And I think it's very important to journal as well, like your progression or how much you did each day, and so you've got a routine and sort of structure as well. So then you're not just going out there and just walking 20 minutes and feeling fatigued straight away. I think it's important to work out what's worked the day before and then do that again, and then maybe do maybe a tiny bit more in the afternoon if you're feeling well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally what I experienced. And also that kind of leads into the next category, which is mindset, because part of mindset is also understanding your body, knowing your body, right?
Yeah, for sure. And for me, I found mindset was the biggest factor. Once I was able to start managing my anxiety and my mental health, well, then my sleep started getting better. I was able to start to move more, and my gut health, in connection with my Ayurvedic diet, was able to, about there's been proven about the gut and the brain sort of science. I'm not going to go into it or anything like that. But like once my mindset was able to be a lot more calmer, everything else was starting to work a lot better, a lot smoother.
Yeah. And how did you get to the point where you felt like you were becoming more calm? What were some things you put in place?
Oh, because it was like it took me about. I had these killer migraines. They were absolutely killing me. Like
Mm.
they were painful as, and I had them for the first year, and I was still in an absolute state of confusion about the illness at this stage. And then I sort of worked out I might have had like a good day, and I sort of worked out that the headaches was just stress all in my head, like internal stress. And then I sort of,
Wow.
if I can calm myself down, they won't be as severe. Um, but anxiety and mental health was so foreign to me because previously I was on the go so much, working hard, partying hard, traveling hard, type A, running marathons, playing footy, that I didn't have time to worry about if I had anxiety or anything like that. So then I was left to my own devices. I suppose the Toby Morrison course got the ball rolling for me for mindset, but I suppose I needed to go deeper than that. It
Yeah.
touched the surface, but I needed to I needed to go into a lot more bigger journey into my own mind, and I was lucky enough to have a best mate who was he's a Buddhist. I'm not a Buddhist, but he is, and he was able. He's quite intelligent, but he's not actually on Instagram, so we don't have to mention it, so he won't find out about this. But he was at like every day he'd ring me up for 4 years. So on his way home from work, he'd ring me up in the car, check on me, and then we'd get into deep sort of conversations, and I'd let go, and I sort of used him as my own sort of psychologist and all like that. As
I was gonna say, at that stage, you don't need a therapist.
Yeah, but then he was able to explain to me about the wandering mind and about our thoughts and conscious thoughts and subconscious thoughts, and how our subconscious thoughts are 95% they're our default pattern, and how they're generally negative thoughts. They're just conditioned that way for everyone, and basically they're just the thoughts at the back of your head, and basically don't feed them. But sometimes they might be positive, but generally a lot of the time they will be negative. And it was only through lots of practice of meditation and getting to know my own mind and getting to know my own thoughts, I was able to move the meditation and start using those skills I'd learned in meditation in everyday life. So then if the thoughts came up and I was walking down the street or whether I'd know straight up not to go there. And it generally, like, once it started getting a lot better, the thought, like, as you can reprogram or rewire your mind, and generally for me, I found that these thoughts weren't as common as what they were towards in recovery. But yeah, definitely that was being able to manage my mental health and my anxiety was a massive change around. And it sort of when that became aligned with, like, it sort of synced in as well, emotionally, physically, and mentally. My healings just happened so quick. So I was basically stuck at 50, but then I was able to move it up straight away because I was able to stay positive, like 100% most of the time. So therefore, everything was able to heal a lot better.
That's amazing. I think it's also just a testament. I think because I went through something similar, it probably didn't. It took me quite a while to kind of, and I'm still kind of coming out of it, doing a lot of personal healing work, and I go to therapy, and hands down, that was the biggest thing that helped me with my recovery. Like, I did all of the other things that you're talking about, and I got up to, like, again, 50% or 60%, could work full time, but that's about it. And then when I started going to therapy, acknowledging my emotions, breaking negative thought patterns, that's when things really turned around for me. Yeah. And that's what I pin it back to when people ask me. It's like, oh, so what, what is the thing that brought you over the line? And I'm like, look, counseling, acknowledging my emotions. Yeah. But we've also got to acknowledge that it is a physical illness as well. So it's physical and so, like, for someone who's never really heard about chronic fatigue, now they just say it's straight up it's definitely not, because there's physical aspects as well. I had an aching back, I had the headaches, and I had so much digestion, the whole lot. But yeah, definitely mindset is where healing begins for me. It's the number one out of the four pillars of recovery. Yeah, and you make such a good point, because so many people, or I don't know, I don't want to say so many, but I have heard and experienced in my own journey people be like, oh, well, if you just changed your mindset, or if you just had less negative thoughts, or if you'd be better. But the thing is it is physical. It is like symptoms manifest physically, and chronic fatigue is an actual physical illness. So it's not all in our head. Yeah. Oh, for sure. 100%. Yeah. So also just a little bit of validation for those. I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because the last thing I would want is for someone to be like, oh, they're saying I'm, like, depressed or anxious or whatever, because that's not what we're saying. But the thing about it is, as well, it took me at least like 2-3 years to finally, like, I was chipping away at my mindset every day,
but it took about 3 years to finally work it out. And yeah, that was my mate helped me. That's who I contribute the most in helping with my mindset, was my mate and his conversations and him helping with me and helping. Like, I just basically debriefed everything that was going on in my head, and he just helped me. And that was the difference. It got the ball rolling. And it's funny enough, he rang me up every day for 4 years, and all he's asked for nothing in return except that I'll share my story and help people who have to overcome what I've had to, like, in the same position. So that's all he asked for. So that's.
I'm so touched, and honestly, that's amazing that he did that, because
every day, like
every day. That's honestly crazy to me. Like, I've never heard of that before. A friend just calling every single day to check up.
Yeah, either that or he visited me when I was in hospital, and he bent over backwards. So he's enormous. He's got a big heart, but yeah.
That's a good friend.
Yeah. So very lucky. But like the other day I saw him and I gave him a massive hug, and I even gave him a peck on the cheek. And I said, "Oh, thanks, mate. You saved my life." And he goes, "I didn't save your life. You saved your own life. Like, I just gave you the promise, but it was you who physically did it. Like, you were the one I had a choice to either listen to what he said or just, just basically just go along and just lie in the unfortunate circumstances, which are what I was in." So, yeah. So he helped, but like I had to do the hard work myself. It wasn't like he was shoving me magic pills or anything like that.
Yeah. So it's sounding like you had a really good support network around you.
Yeah, I'd say and my mum and dad were as well. Like, I had to move back home. I had to move out of my house, move back home, and the amount of money that I spent on just all just trying to see doctors, and this doctor then that doctor, and after that it was just I had to borrow money off them. So they were awesome as well. And just going back to the mind, I think one thing, and just got to be careful, I did also get on medication. I think I won't go into it too much because it's definitely not my position to, but I think anything that helps, that's going to help your mindset in a positive way, I think you have to like I tried it and it did. It took me a couple of goes to get onto the right medication as well. So it wasn't, and it's not a quick fix. It only worked in conjunction with the mindfulness practice that I worked with, but in the meditation and all like that. So it worked hand in hand. The medication didn't do it for me, but it definitely helped. It helped take the edge off things as well. So
that's really
good. Definitely helped, but it worked in conjunction with all the training that I did with my mind over that 3 year.
And thank you for sharing that as well, because there's so much stigma even around medication. And I've definitely spoken with my therapist about that as well, and it's been a conversation that we've had, because sometimes you're just in such a difficult place emotionally that you do need that help, and that's okay. And I personally, my body reacts adversely to any sort of medication, so I've found natural ways to boost my mood, and I've taken supplements that have helped with that. So you make such a good point. It's okay to go on medication. It's okay to seek out those types of options, because it is really hard sometimes.
Yeah. Just anything it just gave me a 10% edge, and I just needed that 10% boost. Like you need any boost, really. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing all of that. how much would you say you recovered, and what is the next step for you? What's the plan?
Okay, so I say I'm 100% recovered because at the moment I can run 30Ks. I'm back running, and I can
Wow.
run 30Ks just straight off like that. I'm back at doing football training, AFL preseason, and I can get, and it's pretty tough, and I can get through that fine, and I can work 5 days a week. But I say that I'm only 85% recovered because I treat every day like recovery. I only have to eat the
Yeah.
wrong foods, don't go to bed at the wrong time, have the wrong negative thoughts, and it's only gonna have like little relapses of consequences. So pretty much all the healthy habits which I had learned in that 4 years of recovery are pretty much basically ingrained now in my lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about recovery as well, is like it's such a big word, and I think it's important, at least for me with my journey, that I make the distinction between, yes, I'm recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome, which is a pervasive feeling of tiredness, post exertion malaise, um, resting but still feeling tired, which is all of these kind of like symptoms of chronic fatigue. But I still have dietary I have intolerances. I still have to make sure I'm getting enough sleep. I still have to exercise.
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever lose that.
Nah. Well, let me just 2-3 days ago I had a car accident and I'm
Oh,
fine.
wow.
But
Sorry.
I wrote my car off, and straight away those headaches which
Wow.
I had. So it just goes to show how I was feeling 9 out of 10 for like the last 2 months, but just how temperamental it can be. And yeah, the headaches come back for about a day. The chronic fatigue headache, the exact same headache.
Wow.
So yeah, everything is still temperamental, but I just had to really just watch a lot of my thoughts, and because I was internally stressed after what happened. I was a bit shaken up, but yeah,
Yeah, I
and
can
at the end of the
imagine.
day, you got to be positive about it. And I was like, I was fine, and it's just a good wake up call. And a lot of times we might be on autopilot just to wake up a little bit, and especially when you're driving or something like that as well, or with your thoughts, or yeah. So it was a good honest wake up call, and hopefully it was in a way a dash of good luck. So after I didn't have much luck for about 4 years, so yeah, I'll look at it in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, and even for me, I have to make sure that I'm doing all of the right things, and I still get flare-ups, not as much with the fatigue, more, and it's more my chronic pain. If I and this is as well with with the my health is I would say I'm recovered from chronic fatigue, but I still have chronic pain, and I'm still working through that, and I'm also believing that I'm going to be able to overcome that as well. But I also, we talk about the Spoonie community and all of that, and yes, I'm recovered from CFS, but for me, it's like once a Spoonie, always a Spoonie, because
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
you don't lose that mindset, that Spoonie mindset, um, that empathy, that compassion, that making sure you're taking care of yourself, prioritizing. There's so many things you learn in the journey that you take into recovery, you take into moving forward in life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, I just want to reiterate, this whole podcast is not about us telling you how you're going to recover, that you're going to recover, when you're going to recover. It's really just a conversation around how Chris and I did our journeys, comparing notes, etc. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Send us any questions via Instagram about either of our journeys. And just to finish up, Chris, your
Yeah.
recommendations of the week.
So in terms of getting yourself better for just I can remember when I confused myself so much over all the stuff on the internet. So I joined up on the CFS program, and I just said to myself, that's it, no more searching the internet. I'm just going to stick to what they So, and that helped heaps.
Yeah. So this is the CFS Health Toby Morrison program in Melbourne.
Yeah, program. Yeah. So
Okay.
that stopped all the confusion in my head about just online, because there's just so much information out there, both negative and positive. Yeah, I have edit, search that up as well. And yeah, well, for the mindfulness now, as I said to you before, I learned it all off my mates. So I don't really have any books as such, like the go-to books, but I've done a lot of posts on Instagram about what I've basically, from his thoughts to mine. So yeah, have a look at those posts on mindset.
Yeah, definitely. We'll send people over to your Instagram as well. You guys can check out Chris's Instagram. Yeah. We'll put in the show notes Toby Morrison CFS Health course, which can be done remotely from my understanding. We do repost a lot of his like IGTV on our Instagram. Toby had chronic fatigue syndrome and then started a whole CFS center to help people recover. So, and then yeah, Ayurvedic, we'll make sure and put up some recommendations for Ayurvedic doctors in Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
And just basically anything that's going to help your mind as well, your mindset as well, in a positive way.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah, just listening to calming music or getting out into nature or whatever. Just, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
it's been a real pleasure chatting with you and chatting about recovery. And again, guys, if you want to get in touch with Chris, hear more about his journey, follow him on Instagram. We'll put that handle up as well on the show notes. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you.